And look at that. It's Thursday, and on the west coast of the United States, it is about noon. And that means it's time, as always, for the Nerd Log. Thank you so much for joining us. I got my co-host Daniel down at the bottom of the little ladder of people. Daniel, say hello to the people.
Hello, how's it going? My name is Daniel. Super excited to be on the Nerd Log today, talking about the browser agent. If you guys don't know already, I'm a senior developer relations engineer at a company called New Relic. And yeah, super excited for today's episode.
And we've got two guests today, because two guests is exactly what we need. We're talking all about the browser agent today. Our first one is Rebecca Rodriguez. Rebecca, say hi to the people and tell them what you do for New Relic.
Hey everyone, it's nice to meet you all. I'm the product manager here at New Relic on the browser agent, and we're really excited to show you today our open source agents. So looking forward to chatting.
Oh, thank you so much for coming out. And last, we have Martin. Martin, say hi to the people and tell them what you do for New Relic.
Hello, everyone. My name is Martin. I'm a lead software engineer on the browser agent team.
Lovely. And so when we got together, when we talk about what is the topic of this episode, the big thing we want to talk about is the browser agent, New Relic browser getting open source. And that's great. And we will talk about that at length. But the first thing we wanted to say is we say New Relic browser. Now, that doesn't mean New Relic makes a browser, ladies and gentlemen at home. It means that we do browser monitoring. And so I think we should start with talking about, like, what is browser monitoring? Where are we trying to get to with New Relic browser? Where are we trying to go? And so we have that on the screen share.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. I think we could dive in a little bit there.
Dive in.
Hi, folks. What we do here. So when we say browser agent, this is a snippet, a piece of code that you can put on your application, and it is, it will monitor all your user interactions. So again, we're monitoring your application.
So to start with, and I have to do this because I came up from like boot camps and I'm a self-taught developer. So, to start with, like, for myself, when I would be making websites, I would sort of say, well, let me just go and load the site. And then I'll open up the inspector and sort of see how long stuff took to load. And then I'll know, like, how the site is performing. And, hopefully I would be smart enough to be like, oh, don't use like locally cached resources and other stuff to try and eliminate some confounders. But I was still I had to go look at the site to see how it was performing. And this is like several steps beyond that, right? We're not just, I guess, like, the next step would be just kind of test it, but from multiple places, right? Go check it from, go have your friend Steve check it from New York, and go have somebody else who lives in Dublin go check it, and just tell you, hey, it seems to be loading fine. But this is actually monitoring every single user interaction with the site. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So it goes beyond just measuring, like, you might think typically in monitoring that would measure your page load and the actual code itself and that loading the page, but this goes a little bit beyond that. So with New Relic agent, we offer this real user monitoring experience. And what does that mean? It's really collecting data from real user sessions. So you have users out there that are doing different things, just like you mentioned. And so we're collecting all that information, all their sessions, to understand the application performance better. And like some of those takeaways are things like, you can measure those page loads, you can measure JavaScript errors, but it's taking all the information from what all the users' sessions, so what every user is doing, to really make those insights. And
yeah. I'm sorry. I don't mean to. There's like a tiny delay, so I apologize. I promise I'm not actually trying to talk over you, but let me know if it gets too bad. But the one thing that stands right out to me is that we present, even in the summary chart, this thing in yellow and green, front end versus back end. And this is kind of usually my classic example when we say, hey, we're trying to demo the site, or a bunch of users are getting in touch. They're saying, hey, this part of the page is loading really slowly. And very often the first thing we do is wake up the front end team, right? And we say, what did you change about your React site, about your, whatever Ajax code to make the site load more slowly? And so it would be so nice. Sort of the first thing I would ask for anybody getting set up with New Relic is get to a point where you know pretty quickly, is it that the actual front end code is taking a long time to load, or that the code is running just fine, but it's waiting a long time for your back end to reply, right? And if it's a second circumstance, hopefully when you see a problem, you don't have to wake up and bother the front end team. Their code is working as designed. So that's kind of the beginning of our binary search, right? We're able to take half of our possible causes and put them to one side by saying, hey, it's not the front end, or it maybe is the front end in this case.
Yeah, so I had a question for the group while we're at it. So how would a developer like myself add this amazing feature to my site? Trying to like transition the conversation to the agent.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. One is if you're already using one of our language agents, say you're a Python or you have a Python application already. What's pretty neat about that is that the browser agent will automatically inject into your application. So you're getting that. You're kind of getting that for free. So it's really simple if you're using one of our other language agents. Otherwise,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's also a second option. You can also copy and paste the code into your different into different pages on your site. So there's another way to do that there. And we can certainly show where that. So if you go over here, your application settings. So you copy, and I can show you here. So if you copy the snippet into your header, this is another way that you can get browser monitoring.
Yeah, so that first one that you mentioned is pretty neat. This was not, when we first did Relic Browser way back in the day, this was not available. That like we would, and it's part of sort of the power of our language agents in general is like, since they've been around for a long time, they're constantly getting worked on. They do a lot of like automatic detection of what you're probably doing with your application. So that's both like, obviously the main thrust of that is instrumentation, like trying to figure out what methods you're using and this kind of stuff. But the other big piece is that, or another big piece is that we can see when it seems like your web application is trying to compose a web page, right, as a reply, and say, oh, while you're doing that, go ahead and inject this into the head to add this new Relic instrumentation to the page load.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed that there's a couple like levels of browser instrumentation there, and I know none of us are salespeople. It's not our job to talk about packages and Premium Plus and all these other things, but I am curious what SPA is. Pro and SPA. Pro and SPA.
Yeah, so this is our recommended approach. Really, with Pro and SPA, you get everything that browser has to offer. So SPA stands for single page application. So it's single page application monitoring. So you get a little bit more visibility of your single page applications, a little more features there. But what's really important that I'd like to, let you all know, which is pretty neat about using the SPA agent, is that you can get what we call distributed tracing here at New Relic. So,
yes.
What is distributed tracing?
Yes. So I interact with distributed tracing a little bit in the serverless world, where, this is kind of like, it's not just a New Relic term, right? Because we use it. Open tracing also says like, hey, our goal is to hit distributed tracing. But tell us, Rebecca, about what is distributed tracing when we say that?
So distributed tracing really is going to give you that full visibility all the way from your front end to your back end to your data stores. You're going to know when that request comes in. You're going to be able to filter that down and know through your whole application infrastructure where that request is lagging. So this is, kind of what we mean by like also like full observability. And so by using our SPA agent, you will get that visibility.
Yeah. So this is, when I first sort of heard about distributed tracing, I didn't fully understand it because it wasn't a thing at the beginning of kind of observability stuff. I was like, okay, yes, you want to see the front end and back end connected, but if you have a sort of, your standard, first year of boot camp or first week of boot camp app where it's like, well, this thing the back end creates a full HTML response, sends it to the application, the front end, renders it, formats it, and shows it to you. It's like, okay, all requests go from the front end to the back end. It's pretty straightforward. But a modern application so often uses all these little microservices that just mean that, a request doesn't just go, it isn't that simple, sort of two-way street, like it's not like the driveway in your house that's just in and out and in and out. It's like, well, it goes here, the request gets passed over here, maybe it gets forked to multiple services. And so distributed tracing is like, it's becoming more and more key. Like, it's not that meaningful to see like every time component on one service. You really need to connect it to where else it's getting passed to.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So if you enable this, does this show up in the tracing UI of New Relic 1, the browser information, or do you have to go to a separate page to like find all of the information around like the browser product?
Yeah, it will show up in the browser application UI. You'll see so this is the spot on, so you see all your summary pages, and yeah, all in the standard browser UI for sure.
We may not be set up, Daniel, to demo this, but we can definitely show it on a layer stream. So you can even get like all the way deep in your backend services, like on some AWS Lambda function. You can see like, hey, this request started in the browser over here, and you can see it connected in a single trace, which is pretty neat.
That is real end-to-end observability. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's very, very neat to see. Sorry, Martin, it seems like you're going to say something.
I was going to say something. So if I can just add a little detail. So here, like if you are in the browser application here, you have a link at the top to distributed tracing. So that link is essentially the same UI as like if you go to distributed tracing UI, like from the homepage, except that it will like filter it into like traces that only contain the spans from this browser application.
Oh, neat.
But you can certainly go the other way. Like if you went to the distributed tracing UI and filtered on spans, and like what spans to look for, then you can just do the same thing there.
Love it. Now, we did say there was a topic to this show, and so we talked about New Relic Browser, but we did say, hey, New Relic Browser is now open source. So I'd love to get into like, what does that even mean, and what does it mean for our users?
Absolutely. And I think one thing I just want to quickly mention before we show all that good stuff.
Okay. I didn't mean to rush us.
Always jump in there. Want to show off all our neat features. So one thing, and I assume we all can still see this summary page here. One thing I do want to point out on the top here is another kind of iteration and advancement in monitoring and in browser performance monitoring. And this is perceived performance metrics, what you're seeing at the top here. And this is really like, this goes beyond those traditional metrics that we just talked about before. It goes beyond the page loads, it goes beyond the JS errors, and really focuses on how the users are experiencing your site. There could be, each user, might experience slightly differently depending on the network and other things. And so here, these are indicators of how your user is perceiving that site, and these are standards that that were created by Google, and they're always evolving, and so we certainly have brought those into our monitoring as well, and made those front and center. Because it's really important is how your user is perceiving your site. And we don't have to go through all the details. I definitely want to get to open source, but I can quickly name what some of these are.
Yes, please.
So here we have largest contentful paint, and that means
that's self-explanatory. It's the largest contentful paint. Think about it. I'm sorry. That was a joke. I think know what it means, but you take paint and you make it contentful. Like paint.
exactly how content we are. I'm not sure I'm ever very content when I'm painting because I'm not that good at it. But for in the purposes of our monitoring, luckily that's not the case. We don't have to measure how well I paint or not paint. But this is how quickly the largest item on your page loads. So like whatever the largest section of your page, whether it's an image or what that is, that's
when we say largest, that's not kilobytes. That's largest, like visually largest on the page. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this second bucket here is first input delay. And that's how quickly it would take for someone to when is the point that someone can interact with that page? So when can I quickly press that button, for example?
I see. So it's like when button elements load in, then you have first input delay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not. So it measures when it measures the first time that a user interacts with the web page. It tells you what that first experience was.
Oh, okay.
So it doesn't matter when that happens. It could happen 5 seconds in. It could happen a minute in. But the first time they interacted with the web page, how quickly did the web page respond?
Okay. All right.
And then we have this final bit here, which is the cumulative layout shift, and that's more of how bouncy your page is. So it's going to even add come in and then
this is you load the page and the footer from the bottom of the page at the top for a second before stuff pops in and shifts it down.
Yeah.
This is
oh, sorry, go ahead.
This is interesting because it's the only thing. It's the first time that Twitter was able to actually get a negative number.
Yeah, I want to just mention that I think this is really amazing because when I was doing a lot of web dev work, especially for clients, the way that I measured performance was through Chrome DevTools or Lighthouse directly in my browser window. But I was never able to get details about how my end users were actually consuming the product, were actually interacting with the site. So the fact that Relic provides core web vitals of actual users and the sessions they have had is, I think, really, really cool. Because so far, all I've been able to do is test on my local computer, which may or may not reflect the end experience of users that are actually interacting with your site.
And while Google releases these guidelines, and they're really great for really giving you a realistic view of how the page feels. If you load a page and there's a big empty box in the middle of it for 20 seconds, that's how long you feel like the page took to load, right? So they're very real world measurements. They're also taking into account for page rank. So anytime you want to appear high in Google results, if you have very low numbers on these, right, your page will get ranked down. So
wait, isn't low better? If you have high numbers.
Oh, come on. Oh, I was just thinking of the thing. I was which direction is the y-axis? Right. Is low better on cumulative layout shift? That's the thing.
It is.
First input to okay. Contemporary paint, low. User time on site. I think. Well, okay. We want user time on site to be high, Daniel.
Okay.
But okay. So, but if you have bad, can I just say bad?
Yeah.
You will get moved down in page rank. So these really are critical, and it's not that obvious how to measure them otherwise without paying for a separate and often very expensive service that's we go and test for you. But when they go and test again, that's just their test numbers. That's not what your actual users are experiencing.
Not to sound like salespeople, but this feature is the bee's knees.
Yeah.
Let me tell you.
You can very easily install New Relic across your whole stack. Again, I'm not salesperson, I don't know exact numbers or anything. But what I have found is that you can install New Relic across your whole stack, get insight into your application metrics and everything else for the same price that one of these really expensive marketing firms will charge you to just give you your core web vitals, again, just on test cases rather than with real data. So it is really nice to have. Okay, now, Rebecca, I'm not going to steer us on open source yet because I know you have stuff you want to show us, and I want to give you that time because this is cool shit. I didn't know we were doing this. This is really nice.
That was actually what I wanted to show you, so we can dive into.
All right.
I can stop interrupting the program now. We can dive into open source. So
Quick, I have a quick question for you before you talked about the project itself. What kind of inspired the team to release this as an open source project?
Yeah, so really at New Relic, we are committed now to open source instrumentation.
Yeah.
So as some of you may already know or have heard, a lot of our, all of our agents are open source at this time. We have language agents, we have the infrastructure agents. We also have other open source, projects and code at New Relic. But yeah, we're really committed to having all of our instrumentation open, so that we can collaborate with our community.
Yeah, and I think it shows a real trust in what the open source community is like. It's also, of course, this is kind of the direction, right? This is kind of the future, right? You see lots of very exciting work happening from people who are sort of, startups that are sort of adopting or releasing open source products that then it's like, well, what we sell is that we have a great service behind that, right? Which you don't need to keep secrets to have a competitive service, right? To have a great service that processes that data, that shows you that data in a very performative way. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And it also, again, the whole time I've worked with New Relic, which is whatever, it's been 8 or 9 years, there's always been people who want to do amazing stuff with these tools, right? They like what we do, but they want to add this piece and that piece. And in closed source world, that was very tough to accommodate. And at least one, I think 2 of our agents have been open source from the start, and they just, they really have some vibrant interaction that is just really fun to see. And so it's really neat to see that spreading out.
Yeah, absolutely. We know there's a lot of advances we can do here, and we're really excited to hear your feedback. So what I think is really nice about now being open source is that we can collaborate with you directly. You can submit your issues. They're going to our browser agent team. That's some of us are here today, and we'll be able to, talk with us there and make suggestions, and we can kind of innovate and build this together. And so, yeah, we're really eager to hear your feedback and get your, issues, any issues, submit issues in our repo, so we can work together and advance this for the, in the best use cases we can.
I already had the first fun benefit of open sourcing because we've also open sourced our doc site. So it's available as a repo that you can commit to. And so somebody tweeted at me saying like, oh, I've noticed that there's like a little, this is like misleading in the docs. And I went and fixed it, but I was also able to say like, hey, you can just make a commit now and change it. And they were super stoked. This is something they notice like a couple times a year that they want to change our documentation. And now that it's open source, they can just be like, submit a commit to it, and then when we accept it, it's just updated for everybody. That is so nice.
Yeah, exactly. And we look forward to, now you have the transparency and you can see, how we're measuring things, everything that it does. So
yeah, and that part is big because while New Relic has had a great performative experience, it's true. We are going in and instrumenting your code, right? So all over the place, and not just in browser, right? We're changing things about your code. So it's sort of nice for trust to be able to like, yeah, you can go and see what and how we do it. Now for myself, anytime I try to look at like how the node agent works, I'm like, oh, this is using many things I don't. I thought I was a developer, apparently not. But but that's that's just life. That's open source life. So Martin, let's talk about how we can, how people can contribute or how they can explore deeper into the browser agent.
Yeah, for sure. So let me share my screen.
While Martin's getting set up with that, I want to mention that the other day I mentioned to my son that I like to play with his little Lego things when I'm on stream, and he left this guy on my desk who is so cool. Always neat. He's from the Lego Discovery Kit. This little buzzsaw spins. Oh, he's great.
I was obsessed with Lego as a child. It was one of my favorite hobbies.
Yeah, we like it quite a bit. We've been buying like fake bootleg Lego off AliExpress too, and they'll like make stuff that Lego doesn't get to make. Like we made a bunch of Pacific Rim robots that Lego never got the IP for, and it's pretty great. Like they're doing really good generic ones now too.
Awesome. So yeah, tell us. Oh, this looks really cool. This is just on the New Relic GitHub, right? This
Yeah,
browser.
yeah. So it's on github.com New Relic browser agent. So yeah, I think I can talk about, if you have questions, I can talk about anything that you're interested in. But what I thought I would do first is just show how you would go about installing, building the agent, and maybe like putting it in your local HTML web page for like local testing.
Yeah, that would be great. I think that as you're getting started with that, I think this is a pretty relatable thing. That it's great to say, oh, this is open source and it's available. But my first few attempts to make commits to a project, I would just get back. I just could not build that thing, and there'd be a few notes in the README, but I just could not get it working,
Sure.
Either due to containerization issues or what have you. And so, yeah, so let's take a look at like how do you get the thing built.
Yeah, and it's okay. So building is pretty easy. So like I think first thing that you would obviously do is you would fork this. If you wanted to contribute, you could fork it, or you could just clone it directly. So I'm going to clone it. So I already have it forked on my personal account. So I'm just gonna clone it from there. Just go to my terminal.
And can we zoom in and enhance a couple times on this terminal, get a bigger text size?
Sure. Yes. Is this better?
Give me two more.
Two more. Okay.
All right. I love it. Thank you.
All right.
Got I know.
Okay, so I get clone. So here's the source code. Let me open it in my editor. And so the first thing that you would do you would install it. It's JavaScript to npm. So you would just type in npm install. So that installs all the dependencies. So I just like wait a minute.
Usual npm install stuff. No worry.
Yeah.
Hey, at least we can get a permissions error. So we got one up on.
So
when I try to do it.
I had a quick question. Well, it's not a quick question. I had a question.
Okay.
So how does like the New Relic browser agent work in the grand scheme of things? Let's say you install the agent. Well, let's say we just insert the snippet of the agent into your HTML file, and you go to the thing. What happens in the backend, like abstractly, to get that data into New Relic? Like what happens there?
In the backend, in the browser on the client side, or in the backend like New Relic ingest?
Yeah, what does like the browser agent do exactly? Like make all this magic happen?
Yeah, so it depends. Like obviously, it needs to instrument the there are a bunch of it needs to get the data from the browser that it wants to collect. So it depends what kind of data it is. Some data is available through just standard browser APIs, like getting timing their events, or APIs that are built into the browser specifically for performance monitoring. So we just grab the data from there. Other features that are more difficult to observe by APIs or not possible, then we have to instrument those APIs in the agent. So what that means is, similarly to language agents, we would wrap or certain APIs, like we would have to wrap or instrument. So Then once we observe that something is happening, then there is some kind of aggregation or formatting of the data before it's being sent to the New Relic ingest backend. So yeah, I mean, and it's it really depends on the feature. Like we have for timing, like basic timing is not that difficult. For things like monitoring AJAX calls, like XHR or fetch calls, then it's a little more intricate. Monitoring user interactions, like we monitor, like single page application interactions. So whenever a user interacts with the web page, like we monitor that, and we try to determine like if that interaction translates to a route change. Then that involves a lot of instrumentation, because you're kind of looking at, okay, so like the user had to click on something or like interact with the web page, so we have to listen for those events, and then we need to like observe whether the URL changed. We need to like observe if during that time any network calls were being made from the browser. So kind of all to tie it all together, there's a bunch of logic in the agent as well. So
wow, that's awesome.
yeah, so it really depends on the feature. And okay, so now I have the agent installed. So the next thing that I would do is build it. And all of this is, by the way, is in README. In the README, let me actually zoom in on this. Yeah, so the first step is going to be building. So I just did npm install. The next thing I'm going to do is npm run build. I think, yeah, okay, there we go. So you will see output like this. That's essentially, there's a script, build script, obviously, that's that's taking all the source files and bundling them together into files that can be included in the browser. All these files are end up in the build folder, so you can look at if you look at the build folder, they're all here. There are a bunch of them. At the beginning, like when you were looking at the UI, you saw that there were 3 different versions of the agent. There was the Lite, Pro, and Spa. So we build files for all those different versions of the agent. And in addition to that, the agent is divided into two separate scripts. One is called the loader. So you can see a bunch of files that have the loader in their name. That's the script that gets included in the HTML like right off the bat. So like that's the thing that instruments the web page. And then there's a second part of the agent that gets loaded later in the life cycle of the web page, and that's responsible for all the things that can be deferred, like aggregation and sending data to New Relic. So yeah, it's a lot of files here, but essentially that's why. So
yeah, and this is sort of one of the key questions when we ask about the high level. Yes, the user's browser has to send data up to us to know what happened. But not only do we compress it, but of course we wait, right? We're not going to send data such that it's saturating the pipe while the user is trying to do other stuff
right
on the page, right? We make an asynchronous call.
Yes. Okay, so so now we have those files built. Let's see, like, so the next thing like that you might want to do is test it out, right? Like play around with the code, see what kind of data it sends to your application. So so in fact, there's a next section in our README is exactly that: how to run the agent locally. So let's the setup would be kind of depends what kind of application you have. You might have, I don't know, you might have a Node application or Java application or Python. You might have a React application that has its own test server, right? So it really depends what you're testing. But for just for demo purposes, I'm just gonna start. I'm gonna start this HTTP server in my build directory. And it's just going to serve all these files locally. So if I go to localhost 8080, I should see all my agent files here. And what I'm going to do now is open that directory in Sublime or my editor, and just add an HTML file here. Okay, so now I'm just gonna.
Gotta make a website to measure.
Yeah. So if I go back to here, it should show up here. Here it is, and here's my hello. So
there we go. Now we're saying hello.
Okay, so let's go back to the README, and I'm gonna take this script, this snippet, and put it into the HTML page. So that would be in the head. Okay, so here, the first section, this first script here is the configuration for the agent. So you can see that there's a place to put license key and application ID. I'm going to get those a little bit later. And then the second script is the loader. So we know we have the loader serving from the same HTTP server. So I'm just going to do that. And let's see what happens. Okay, so here's one thing that happens is if you look at the network tab, the first agent script was loaded. That's the loader. So that ran fine. And then it tried to load the second part of the agent, and it failed because it tried to load it over HTTPS, over SSL. So by default, the agent communicates with external backend over SSL. Of course, in your local environment, dev environment, you will not have SSL likely, so we can turn it off. And so there's an additional configuration that we have to do, which would look like this.
I have a question. So in the agent, in the nreum.info, under the agent thing, if you type in http://localhost, would that work? Or do you have to do this additional configuration to disable SSL?
You mean right here on the line 10?
Could you do http localhost? Would that work?
So you can, the agent will actually add the protocol internally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so this flag, yeah. So okay, so now it loaded the second part of the script, and it tried calling it tried calling the backend to send some data to the backend. And you will actually see that it was aborted because we don't have the valid license key. So what I can do if you're interested is I could try to actually put in a valid license key and see if we can get that working.
Oh, because the issue is we're using a local version, but of course we need the actual New Relic service to get the data.
Yes.
Well, and also to grab the actual full agent code. Yeah.
So like the agent is actually now running on the web page.
Right.
It's just like when it's trying to send data to New Relic, we don't have a valid license key here in the source code. So like the New Relic backend actually replied saying you didn't send me valid license key. So
got it. So I guess what would be interesting is to like try to. I mean, it's unlikely that we as amateurs, like that Daniel and I, are going to make edits to the actual agent that are going to be terribly meaningful. I mean, I guess we can at least look at like what that code looks like before minimization.
okay. So you want me to like actually put the license key in there?
Oh yeah, let's do that. Let's put the license key in and let's see it send data.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So let's see. So I'm going to add a new browser app. I'm going to copy paste. And then I'm going to name it something.
So if you click yes, that means like you already have another APM running and you just want to add browser on top of that. Is that correct?
Yes. So you can then, yes, you can link an APM application to a browser application that way.
Perfect.
But I don't have one, so I'm going to say no. I'm going to enable this. And then I was creating a new application, so it gave me the whole script here. This snippet actually contains the loader script plus configuration at the bottom. So I'm going to grab it and put it in my window here. And you can see that this line 5 has that configuration.
Okay.
Let me actually wrap it so we can see it.
That's a lot of code.
Well, yeah. So it's for like it's minified. This is minified. The loader minified is around 25K.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not a lot of code in terms of going over the wire. Yeah, a lot of code in terms of now let's go and start messing with it.
Right, right. So we're not. So like instead of putting this whole script into my test application, like we're just doing the same thing, but we're including it as an external script.
Yep.
And then I'm gonna just grab this at the bottom. So here is the license key. So I'm gonna grab that and put that here. And then application ID is here. Okay. So by the way, all these all these steps are also in our README. So if the next section here, the next section in the README is configure the agent. And so it's telling you to go to like assuming you have a browser application created in your Relic UI, then you can go to application settings, and then the same script will be available there. Okay, so let's try this now. Okay, so let me see if my screen refreshes. Okay, so I did refresh the screen, and now it made these calls to bam.nrdata.net. That's actually the agent sending data to New Relic. and there's no, so like we should be able to, in theory, hopefully, now go to our application and see if it has any data.
May I say that BAM is an amazing name for an endpoint? I must say. BAM, your data is available.
So yeah, let's let me just refresh.
Demo. Is it demo open source agent? Are we sure that's the right name of the thing?
Yes, it is the right thing.
Okay.
So I'm actually trying to figure out if, let's see, it's actually not getting created. So let me improvise here a little bit. So I think what's happening is the agent is sending version number to the backend, and the version number here is set to development. So I think it needs to be a valid number. I can proceed. I can go forward with this if that's interesting, or I can just tell you that that's what it is.
I think Nika, you're muted. Nika.
Oh no! I muted myself. Free me from my eternal prison, Superman. Sorry about that, but yeah, this is the whole, the joy of actually live demoing stuff, right? For sure, of course, if you're going to replicate something, oh yeah, that looks like it probably is the interesting. For sure, if you're going to try to replicate this, obviously there's a couple of config steps, but it looks like super well documented. So I really do invite people watching, especially watching us on replay, to take a look and go a little deeper and try to see if you can modify the agent and also just see it working locally, which is kind of neat for like looking at network traffic and looking at how that agent actually loads.
Yeah.
And also, everybody's saying hi in chat. Nobody has asked us any specific questions, so I'm just going to say
hello.
Timmy the Small Turtle does mention that his dad is Corey Arnold, which I hope is an information-dense transmission to some of you. To me, I'm not 100% sure on why that's interesting, but I'm glad that someone has told me. So, Martin, I'm curious, how would you recommend if you feel like, someone's like, hey, I want to do an early commit, I want to take a look at this and try to contribute. Is there an area where you think that someone might be able to make like a meaningful change to the browser application? Or is it more like, hey, if you have something that you want the agent to do that it doesn't currently do, right, that's probably where you want to get started?
Yeah, so I think typically, I think that the biggest challenge that we have with browser is that it runs on so many different platforms, so many different browser versions, and types of applications. Like people will have like from the simplest HTML pages to like very complex React or Angular applications. And people like, there are so many different JavaScript libraries out there that it's really difficult for us to I mean, we can't test everything. So there will be cases where like, customers will notice, hey, like it's not, I'm seeing like this is not working exactly as I would expect. Or maybe they find some incompatibility between our agent code and some JavaScript library that they're using.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, in those cases when customers, when users will find some of those things, often the issue for us as our development team is reproducing those issues, because we don't have the same environments. We don't always have all the information about like what our customers are using. So, like I think the best thing, like if that happens, like being able to actually build it, test it look at the code and actually trying to figure out where the issue is happening is a huge help for us.
Yeah, that really, it does feel like there's sort of two routes that are open now that really weren't before. And one of them is, oh my God, Slack noise. You turn back on after an hour. I'm so embarrassed.
Oh my God.
Brush pick sound. Oh no. Okay. So the two big routes that are open is one, for sure, if you're using some relatively obscure, front-end JS library and you're like, yeah, I wish it would measure this one thing, that would be a really strong place to look at contributing. But obviously also if you're experiencing something weird and you're having trouble replicating it, being able to go and grab a local version is a really nice way of packaging it up and submitting, hey, I have this issue and here's where I've identified it. So it's a real nice act of trust for the community, and I'm really excited to see how it expands. So folks, that has been the open source browser agent. Do we have other things that our lovely guests want to make sure we go over before we start to wrap things up? Nope. I mean, my can of Fresca is done, so you know we're out of time now. I've got like 20% of a coffee cup. By the way, folks, don't drink coffee and Fresca at the same time. It's not great. Just a little tip, unrelated to open source.
And just so you can find where to find all this too. If you go to newrelic.com, there's an open source page. You can see all of our agents there, and that's where you can click over, and that's how you can get access to all of our GitHub code. And so, yeah, if you're wondering how to get here, and yeah, I just want to say, encourage you all also, kind of again to, submit those issues, and you'll certainly see, our team engineers responding to those back and forth, and we can chat if they're going to make it on our roadmap and things like that. And so, yeah, it's just good to chat with you all today, so you can get some faces to the team when we're talking and chatting with you all.
Yeah, we've had great attendance for the live stream today, so thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. If you're watching the taped YouTube version, do feel free to comment down below on YouTube, and I'll see it and reply right away, because I'm always interested in the conversation that we have. Also down below, both in the Twitch chat and down below on YouTube, you'll see links to our open source browsers. Also, just take a look at github.com/newrelic. Unlike our Twitch, which is /new_relic, it's just New Relic. Don't worry about it. Check it out. Take a look at our other stuff. I think it's really, really neat. I think that, no, you're not going to develop a way better browser agent on your own, but it is fascinating to look at how it's done. I think it's incredibly instructive to try and see, how other stuff has been constructed and make your own version. I spent about a year writing my own file compression stuff, which of course was incredibly worse than real file compression. But it was really neat to give it a try. I really need to experiment with. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. Now I got to do plugs. The big one and the most important one, I know, producer Mia is going to put it in the chat, is FutureStack. FutureStack is coming right up. There is still swag available. You can get conference swag without having to leave your home. So take a look, bit.ly/FutureStack-Twitch to get tickets. And we're going to probably be talking about browser stuff. Rebecca, are we talking about browser stuff at FutureStack this year?
I haven't scanned our agenda, but
you know what? There is, I promise it.
Likely.
And if I'm wrong, you can yell at me directly. But
we talked about the browser agent for a hot 3 minutes in my talk.
Oh yeah, we talk about browser agent. We talk about students using New Relic to do deep instrumentation, which Daniel might be doing a session about. No,
I am. It's not might. I am.
That was a light Tony, bud. That was an understatement, a comedic understatement. But
when it comes to FutureStack, we don't joke around.
We don't joke around when it comes to FutureStack.
FutureStack is the event of the century. We can't joke around with that. I'm joking. Yeah. So I'm super excited to actually talk about the browser agent and what it can do. I'm even doing a workshop on how to use the browser agent for Future Hack. So if you're interested, come sign up for FutureStack. We're giving away a bunch of prizes as well.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a really fun hackathon. So what am I doing in FutureStack? I'm helping with the Future Hack Hackathon. I'll be, I think, on the judging panel for that. I'm doing a session about Ruby and making and coding music, and also how a project that you made for children can become the most popular music platform in the Ruby community with Sam Aaron. That'll be fun. And then also, I'm probably talking about serverless and New Relic, and I probably already taped that talk, and I probably forgot about it, but I bet I did. I bet we are. And so, yeah, it's gonna be a great session. If you have watched to the end of a 1-hour live stream about open source browser agents, I guarantee you that FutureStack has something for you. So do come check it out. Other stuff, Daniel, that we need to plug. Martin, do you have a SoundCloud album coming out that you'd like to drop, or a other social media presence that you want us to be aware of?
I wish I had a new album coming out on SoundCloud. No, I'm not particularly, no. So
I will mention that we do actually, like, New Relic really does have about 2 or 3 of the, like, I'd say, like, top 100 ambient music artists on Earth working at the company. And so, like, our music production Slack is always dead fascinating. So do check it out if you're an internal New Relic person watching this music production. You can learn a lot about MIDI and stuff. I don't understand all of it. I find that. Rebecca, do you want people to follow you on the socials? Do you have stuff you want people to check out? Working on? And
I don't really have anything particular, but I'm going to work on my SoundCloud after this stream.
Fantastic. And as for me, you can follow me on Twitter at serverlessmom. You can find me on Twitch at serverlessmom. You can find me on TikTok at serverlessmom, where I make a lot of jokes about data consistency. And yeah, thank you so much for coming. Oh, hey, maybe Daniel will say where you can follow Daniel, just as a
yeah, just follow me on Twitter. I'm really active on Twitter. I'm addicted to Twitter. It's at LearnWDaniel. And yeah, super excited to see everyone at FutureStack. It's gonna be.
Thank you so much for coming out, everybody. Also, thank you so much for chat. We didn't answer your questions, but you answered each other's questions, which I love. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you.